Well, let's get the thoughts of analyst Robert Naiman from the non-partisan Just Foreign Policy Group. Now, you're very welcome to the programme. First of all, could Netanyahu really derail any possible nuclear deal with Iran, especially since the Republicans dominate Capitol Hill anyway?
Well, I wouldn't say never, but following this in the press, the dynamics seem to be going against him. After all, we know from the beginning he already has most Republicans on his side. Every Republican senator, every Republican in the Senate, except for Rand Paul and Jeff Flake, eating out of his hand. So if he really, as was claimed by Israeli government officials, if his goal is to get an override, a vote for an override of new sanctions against Iran in the Senate, he needs Democrats. What he's done and what his supporters have done have alienated Democrats and pushed Democrats away from him. So most people think that if there was whatever chance there was before of getting Congress to override President Obama on new sanctions on Iran, which is, of course, all about trying to blow up the talks, because that would be a violation of the interim agreement. Nobody seems to think that he's improved the chances of that. Just the opposite. He's pushing Democrats away, which is maybe part of why 2/3 of Israelis think that this trip to Washington is about the Israeli election in 2 weeks, not about Iran's nuclear program.
Last October, one Obama administration official called Netanyahu a coward, but actually used a stronger word, in fact. Why do America's current leaders have such a problem with him?
Well, he's clearly using certain kind of rhetoric and manipulation for his own personal and partisan gain. You remember that the conservative French President Sarkozy was caught on a hot mic saying that Netanyahu was a liar. We've learned in recent weeks that Israeli intelligence cables released that show that Israeli intelligence contradicted the alarmist assessment of Iran's nuclear program that Netanyahu put out publicly. That Israeli intelligence contradicted his, assessment of what would happen if the nuclear talks broke down. So there is a sense that Netanyahu is being the opposite of a statesman. He's being the opposite of somebody who's looking at long-term interests. He's looking at his short-term, personal, political game to really demagogue these issues and say, oh, this is the threat to the state of Israel, existential threat to the state of Israel, even though the outlines of an agreement have been known for years. You know, either you want an agreement or you don't. You want a negotiated agreement or you don't. If it's a negotiated agreement, there's going to be some compromise. No analyst thinks that stopping Iran from having any nuclear program at all, stopping Iran from enriching uranium at all, is an objective that can be achieved through diplomatic negotiations. So if you say Iran can't be allowed to have any nuclear program at all, that's the only outcome, Iran can't be allowed to enrich uranium, then what you're saying sneakily in a backhanded way is, I'm against any realistic negotiated deal. Paul Pillar, ex-CIA analyst, recently had a piece, get over it. The deal doesn't get better than this. Robert, it's time for people to say, I want a deal or I don't want a deal.
Robert, just briefly, how does Netanyahu, much does he need U.S. government support at this moment, you believe?
Well, there are so many levers that the Obama administration could use to pressure Netanyahu that it is not using. You know, there were reports when the administration announced that they were sending Samantha Power to AIPAC, the UN ambassador, that this was intended as a signal, like it's a reminder that the U.S. is defending the Israeli government at the United Nations with the U.S. diplomatic umbrella. Anytime the U.S. makes clear that it wouldn't veto United Nations Security Council resolution, say, condemning Israeli settlement expansion in the West Bank, that resolution will show up on the American desk the next day. So the U.S. has tremendous levers on the Israeli government that they're not using. And I think that's why we're seeing now, today and probably tomorrow some attempt to paper over the differences, because Netanyahu knows full well at the end of the day that the Obama administration has cards that it is not played yet.
Analyst Robert Naiman from the Just Foreign Policy Group, thank you for joining RT International. Now,